So I started writing when I was about 4. And I had a story. I was in kindergarten when I was 4, and I had a story published in the school paper. It was called Eric's Spooky Halloween. That's all I remember about it. But
Awesome.
it was published way back when. And then I loved reading and writing. And then again in middle school, there was this big contest with this big newspaper, my hometown, Springfield, Massachusetts. They're Republican, and they're the big daily out there. And they had this contest for kids to write an article about someone they admired. And I wrote a story about the woman that helped my stepfather find his biological parents. It's what she did for a living,
Wow.
was track down the biological parents of adopted kids. It's a really cool job.
From cave drawings to family histories to stories around the fire, humans crave order among chaos, connection amid isolation. So, we tell stories. Our mission at the Storytellers Network is to bring the art of story to the masses. Whether you're in marketing, you're an entrepreneur, or you're developing your own personal brand, telling your story effectively can make the difference between celebrating milestones and collecting unemployment. The Storytellers Network strives to help storytellers tell their stories so you can learn from the best. Now, your host, the inbound evangelist himself, Dan Moyle.
Welcome to the Storytellers Network podcast. I'm so glad you're joining us today. In this episode, we talk with writer, creative mastermind, and project slayer, Danielle Rhodes. She's currently a content marketer for the marketing and branding agency Impulse Creative. Danielle has also worked in journalism and was a writer in the creative department at Lego. Today, Danielle shares with the Storytellers Network her unique take on storytelling and her story. Now, before we get into today's conversation, just a reminder, you can find us online at thestorytellersnetwork.com for more episodes, how to contact us, and for other resources to help you tell your story. And if you like what we're doing here on the show, please consider leaving us a review and a rating that helps us reach new storytellers. Thank you to Podcast Pilot and Casterly for supporting this podcast. If you want experts on this whole world of podcasting, like how to start your own show, talk to the teams headed up by the legendary Jamie J. and Sarah Parrish. Now, let's get to the stories. So yeah, thanks for joining us today, Danielle. I'm so excited to hear your story and your storytelling craft. So appreciate you making the time today.
Welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So let's start with where I like to kind of begin is the idea that storytellers and writers in particular can be anywhere in the world. You know, if you're a movie maker, you might be in Hollywood. If you're an artist, you might be in Nashville, or a musician, you might be in Nashville. But you truly can be anywhere. So where are you geographically in the world right now?
I am in North Carolina, and my employer is in Fort Myers, Florida. So it's location doesn't matter. I've been all over the country as a writer, and it rarely matters where my clients are.
I love it. I love it. Now, you clearly see yourself as a storyteller. So where does that story for you begin?
Oh, wow. As in my personal story?
Yeah. You know, when did you first realize that you were a storyteller? And obviously, you know, we're talking about writers this first season, but you know, in your bio, you know, it's visual, it's writing, it's everything. So where did you kind of realize, like, you know what, I am a storyteller, and this is what I do because this is who I am?
So there's a couple of moments that really define that. So I started writing when I was about 4. And I had a story. I was in kindergarten when I was 4, and I had a story published in the school paper. It was called Eric's Spooky Halloween. That's all I remember about it.
Awesome.
But it was published way back when. And then I loved reading and writing. And then again in middle school, there was this big contest with this big newspaper, my hometown, Springfield, Massachusetts. They're Republican, and they're the big daily out there. And they had this contest for kids to write an article about someone they admired. And I wrote a story about the woman that helped my stepfather find his biological parents. It's what she did for a living.
Wow.
Was track down the biological parents of adopted kids. It's a really cool job. On top of that, she had disabled kids, and the tracking down the parents was a hobby for her. She worked full-time as a teacher. So she was just this amazing woman. And even at 12, I kind of recognized all that she was juggling. So I wrote this story about her, and I won the freaking contest. Yeah, out of thousands of kids. And they took me, I remember they pulled me out of music class and took me in the hallway, and they said, did anyone help you with this? Like, we need to know. And like, it was the first time of many in my life that I was accused of plagiarism. And I cried, and it scared the crap out of me. But yeah, I got published. I won $50, or maybe it was 100. I still don't think I've been paid as much for a single newspaper article since.
Yeah, journalism doesn't pay, does it?
No. I ended up going on to work for that newspaper as a reporter, and was part of a really big award they won from the AP. So yeah, I think
Very
those
cool.
2 moments, it was never a doubt. This is what I was supposed to do. It's just, that's what I am. So.
What you are, your core. I love it. You know, I had sort of a similar thing where I was almost accused of plagiarism on a story I'd written in college. We had to do a short story based on Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. And so I wrote one called Worms, real original. But the way I wrote it, the professor came back and said that same thing. And same thing, like, oh my gosh, what is that, a compliment, or is that, are you saying I shouldn't be that good? Like, what does that mean? Yeah, totally understand.
Just second guess yourself your whole career.
Totally do. What do you love about telling stories in whatever medium that you're in? What moves you about storytelling?
Oh gosh, I think it's just the ability to, to paint a picture, to really say whatever it is you want, and to have the time to think about it, rather than someone like an extrovert who's out in front of people and maybe doing like what you do and talking, live to people. That kind of terrifies me. But to be able to think about what I want to say and just really make people laugh or cry or feel however I want them to feel. It's a really cool ability.
And so on the flip side of that, Danielle, what's the biggest challenge in storytelling, do you think?
Oh gosh. It depends on what you're writing.
Hmm.
Right now, most of my work almost everything I write is for clients. So they are the biggest challenge, really. I mean, you're trying to figure out what they want to say and then say it in the way that they want you to. So it's a puzzle. But if I'm just writing on my own, probably just the blank page. It's just getting started. I heard that there's nothing more intimidating than a blank page.
And is that true for you then too? Does that intimidate the hell out of you?
It does, unless it's like my 9 to 5, unless it's just work. And then that journalism mindset kicks in, and I thank God I started my career in a newspaper where you just had to get going. So you just start, whether you have anything or not.
Yeah. And what's the difference? So, looking over your career, looking at your highlights and everything, you're a writer, but you're also, I'm seeing a visual storyteller, right? What's the difference between visual storytelling and actually writing for you?
It all kind of, for me, it's all gone together, because the visual storytelling that I'm doing is more art direction for scripts and for photographers and for everyone that's going to take what I write and turn that into like a bigger piece. That's been an exciting thing in the last 10 years or so that I've done, to be able to affect the visuals as well has been a really cool thing.
And so what we're talking about is your time at Lego as Art Director of Editorial. What does that mean on a day-to-day basis for anybody who's thinking about being a storyteller, or they're already a writer? How does that fit into your whole world, being an Art Director of Editorial?
Oh, okay. So when I was at Lego for about, say, 4.5 years, maybe 5. My title is funny because the only reason I was Art Director of Editorial is because they had this huge creative department, and they only had one writer. And when she quit, they hired me. They didn't have in their big corporate structure a job title for editorial. Like, you would start off as like an associate writer, and then the whole editorial spectrum of job titles. They just didn't have it. So I ended up being an art director. They had from 100 people, they had about, 75 of them were designers, and then there was me. So they just kind of gave me that title, but it was everything. I did everything from coming up with initial concepts for new lines of toys. You'd have a couple of toys, and you'd come up with the initial story and pitch it to them. Writing the Lego Club TV scripts, writing animated scripts for teasers and trailers, anything they would show at Comic-Con, writing those videos, proofing everything that came out of the department. That's always a big part of it, just being a proofreader. Yeah, everything.
I'm terrible at proofreading, so that wouldn't be me. Obviously a job's a job, and loving what you do is important, but sometimes a job is just a job. But when for me anyway, as somebody who used to build Legos and still does, even at, my 40s, what was that like working at Lego? Was that just like a total dream job, or was that kind of difficult because of the corporate structure? What was that like?
It was a total dream. I was hired as a freelancer, so they kept me there for a couple of years, and then I think, along with a lot of other companies, they had to start hiring their in-house freelancers because they were just keeping full-time employees without benefits. The money was great. The people were great. It was just a wild place to work as far as the environment. I had never seen anything like that. Nerf gun fights and stand-up desks and Starbucks bars in every building, flying you to Denmark. It was wild, and it was a dream. I think after a while, the whole this is a big corporate machine, and we're all just kind of cogs. It sets in like it does with anything. And I'm sure even people who work for Disney, eventually the magic starts to fade. But it was a really cool place overall.
That's cool. So if you're a writer and a storyteller at your core, how has your chosen field of writing in marketing affected or shaped your storytelling craft?
Oh, sure. So you think more about how to be influential. You're more on top of trends, what you can say, what you can't say, what's converting well, that kind of stuff. It's hard to think of myself as a marketer. I even still, I butt heads with my boss about my job title. It's content marketer. And I wasn't even going to apply for it, but I read the description, and it was basically just asking for a jack of all trades writer. A lot of ad stuff, a lot of ad copy. So I still don't like to think of myself as a marketer, but what I do is just writing with a marketing mindset. That's probably a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know Remington. I'm familiar with Impulse, and I can definitely see the creative minds behind it. Just really move things forward for clients, I got to believe. So that has to be kind of fun to be able to change clients' worlds, I would guess.
It absolutely is. And it doesn't even have to be, we definitely don't have clients like Lego. It's much more tame, a lot of business to business services. But to be able to take what they want to say so desperately and pull it out of them and put it out to the world and have it make money and make things happen for them, it's really cool, and they appreciate it so much. That's a really neat part of the job.
Yeah, sure. So Danielle, how do you see the different media platforms today, whether it's, writing and books or blogging, obviously social media is part of that, video, public speaking, any kind of media, how does that affect your storytelling personally?
How does that affect? Well, there are a lot of voices, Sam. There are a lot more voices than there ever have been. So you have got to fight to be distinct and to be heard in that kind of crowd, because there's just so much noise. That's definitely a consideration. It's something I struggle with. I think all writers do.
And have you found anything that kind of helps you stand out in that crowd, how you can get your story out more effectively?
Just being authentic. That's probably my big thing. Just be yourself. And, if you're me and you've got to write for all these clients, you've got to be them. So, and teach them how to be themselves. So people are gullible, but not as much as you think. And we're just inundated with all of these messages and stories all the time. People will listen if you're true and authentic and you have something nice to say.
I love that. I would just sit on that for a minute and think about that, right? Authenticity, be nice. People will read you. I like that. That's good, Danielle. What is your inspiration as a storyteller? Do you have a particular muse, a particular thing that you do every time you get ready to go tell a story or write? Do you have a common practice or whatever, or any kind of other inspiration? What moves you?
I don't have something I'm always turning to. I like reading. I read a lot of sci-fi. I read a lot of Tom Robbins. This is a whole literary sleeve. It's mostly Tom Robbins. Listen to a lot of NPR, but I don't know. I think I pay attention to things and pay attention to what moves me. And if I hear something, often it's the hilarious, offensive, kind of wild things that I'm drawn to. Anything that makes you stop and think, that's just fantastic. If it makes me stop and think, if I can replicate that or take a piece of that, I can make other people stop and think. And that's essentially what I get paid for.
Yeah. And do you think that your journalism background affects how you look at inspiration? What I'm thinking is some very creative types that, I have a muse. I always have to have my candle burning or my bottle of scotch if you're Hemingway. But for you, is it I just have to be inspired constantly because of the journalism thing?
Because of the journalism thing, I know that you don't need to be inspired. I don't need inspiration. It would be great. In a perfect world, we just all walk around inspired to write all the time. But in the real world, you just have to do it. You just have to start. You have to get it done because you have a deadline or because you just won't finish it if you don't start it. So whether inspiration is there or not, you have to put pen to paper and get something down. That's what journalism has taught me.
That's a great thought. I love that. If you think back on any of the best stories out there, whether it's something creative in fiction or something journalistically wise, that's not a word, is it? Journalism wise, anyway. If you think of the best story, what is one word that you would use to describe what makes that story the best?
Oh, that's tough. Probably fun. For me, writing and reading is all about fun. And because we can choose not to. We could turn on the TV. We could do something else. We don't have to do any of that. But if it's entertaining, it'll be captivating.
Good, fun. I like that. So as a writer, as a storyteller, what is your favorite story?
God, that's so hard. Across mediums, I don't even know that I can do that. My favorite book is still Life with Woodpecker. And as far as stories, one of my favorite stories, I love David Sedaris too. NPR, This American Life podcast. I'm sure you're very familiar. Mm-hmm. Squirrel Cop.
Okay.
Do you know that one?
I don't know.
It is one of their most famous stories, and I listen to it all the time, and it cracks me up. It is this hilarious tale of just what can go wrong on the job for these two poor police officers who go to this house because of a noise complaint or an animal a complaint, and there's a squirrel, and they end up trying to be brave and show off in front of the pretty lady who lives there, and they end up destroying the house and disfiguring the husband, setting the couch on fire. The squirrel gets caught on fire. The house almost burns down. This all happens within like 12 minutes. It's just the way it's told, and just honest and raw and so funny and just self-depreciating. This is great.
All because guys want to impress the pretty girl. It always comes back to that in our stories, doesn't it? No.
Yes, a couple of like 22-year-old new cops, and they were in way over their heads, and it's just a great story.
I have to check that out and share it with everybody for sure. Why do you think we as humans love stories so much, Danielle?
Oh gosh. I think at the core of why we like stories is that we like to understand that we fit in with each other and in places and situations, and we like to be able to relate to the world around us, whether it's our lives or our aspirations or the lives of people we know or things we struggle with. Everybody wants to know that they're not alone. I think stories give us the opportunity to connect.
That's such a great, whether it's for enjoyment and personal, or whether it's that business side of it. Yeah, that connection is so deeply ingrained in us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you think, we talked about media a little bit earlier and the noise of everything, but how do you think that social media in particular, whether it's 140 characters of Twitter or 280 now, or 6-second Vine videos or Facebook Live, how has that social media affected the craft of storytelling in the world today?
Oh, I think it's really stretched people, pushed us and challenged us to be better, faster, flashier, more fun, just up the ante, up the competition, and given us these kind of fun limitations. It's like, okay, well, if I know I can tell a story on this many pages, can I tell a story in 30 words? Can I tell a story in a Facebook post? What can I accomplish, and how can I influence people in this tiny, tiny amount of space? So that's sometimes fun, I think for a seasoned writer, a challenge like that is interesting.
Yeah, for sure. What does making it look like for you as a writer?
Oh, this is a good one. Gosh, I think when I can control, like, when there are no more clients, when I'm the client, and when it can just be anything I want, and I'm dictating what I get to write day to day. Also, in a cabin, isolated away from the rest of the world would be great.
Spoken by a true introvert, huh?
Yeah.
Do you look around right now as a writer who's being paid, someone who's worked at Lego? That's a big ego thing, right? Or an ego stroke at least. Do you look at what you do as kind of, I think I've kind of made it to the next plateau? I mean, you're never done, I don't think. But have you looked around at any point and kind of thought, gosh, I think I kind of have made it?
I've been doing this professionally full time since my first semester of junior college, when I was barely 18 years old. So working for newspapers, and at every point in my career, in every job, I think I made it. This is it. This is awesome. And that's how I know that I picked the right path and the right career, and all the different things I've done: marketing, Lego, naming summer infant products, which I still see when I go shopping. And now that, my husband and I are expecting, it's kind of cool going shopping for things that I got to name. Newspapers, agencies, all of it has been so cool, and has made me think, like, this is it. I'm finally there. I'm excited to see, where I go in the future, if I'm so impressed with where I've been, or excited by it.
All right. Well, congratulations on expecting.
Thank you
awesome.
very much.
Do you think that'll change your craft of storytelling a little bit, to be able to tell stories to your little one now?
Absolutely. I think Lego gave me a huge passion to write for kids. I
Nice.
had no idea how much fun it could be. I've always kind of liked the offensive and edgy and hilarious, and got myself into quite a bit of trouble over that. But you know, kids are great, and they're a whole new challenge as for a writer. So I'm excited to see how that influences me and where I take that on a personal level.
Very cool. Well, good luck on that next step in that path.
Thank you.
So Danielle, what's your favorite way to tell a story? Do you have a particular medium or platform or way to tell a story that you really love?
Um, hmm. I don't know. I think every way you tell a story has its own merits. I love the short story. Give me about like 5 pages, and also the opportunity to read those stories and the pacing that they were meant to be read is a really powerful thing, and to experience people's reactions firsthand. Rather than kind of watching them over their shoulder. I think every writer has had that creeper moment. It's like, oh, here, check this out. And then you just kind of like watch them, you know?
Totally understand that.
So, yeah, are you married?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so does your significant other experience that, like you kind of creeping over their shoulder?
I do. Anytime I give her something, I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? Yeah. And then her whole thing is, well, here's where you made a mistake. Here's where to edit. She's my editor. She's not. I mean, she loves what I do, and she's a fan. But yeah, she's my editor. She doesn't care about the actual content.
Exactly.
Yep.
But you can't. You also like. I also, as a marketing writer, just love one-liners. But in that tight space, having to make an impact or call to action that makes people actually do something, that's really cool too. It's a fun challenge.
That's pretty powerful. It's cool to see what you write, whether like you said, it's call to action or some kind of a copy, a headline makes people move, right? It makes them take that action or whatever it is. That's really cool to be able to see those metrics. Yeah.
Taglines, one of the coolest things in the world to write.
Yeah. Isn't it funny that I sometimes look back at my career so far and I think, okay, I wanted to write the great American novel, or I wanted to write a short story, the like Shirley Jackson's The Lottery or something that moved people, right? But now it's like, you know what? If I can write a headline that makes people stop and go, oh, my favorite writing was literally 2 words. There was a tagline for a company that I used to work for. I just loved what the feeling that it brought.
What was it?
It was for a mortgage company, and it was simply "Welcome Home."
There you go. I'm sure you experience this. We start our careers off wanting to write like The Tale of Two Cities. And here I am at 35. I would be psyched to write the next I'm Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Right.
Like, that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. So writing obviously is who you are at your core, but what is your passion? What drove you to this world of journalism and marketing and the next step? Do you have a particular passion that moves you in that kind of way?
I think just like seeing how I can affect people in that way. Even as a kid, when I was writing, I mean, it always amazed me because it came so easily to me that it always felt like I shouldn't be able to affect people in the way that I can, like a magic power. Now it still feels like that sometimes.
A magic power. I like that. That'll be good. My oldest daughter is a big Harry Potter fan, so she'll like that.
we big Harry Potter fans around here.
I love it. All right, so Danielle, here's the final kind of big question I love asking everybody and see what happens. If you had the ability to only tell one last story, what story would that be?
Oh gosh. That's so tough. Do people have answers to this?
So far, so good. Yeah. And it depends. Sometimes it's something very philosophical. Sometimes it's literally just the next story. I mean, it could be, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you write. I mean, if you have a story that you love, if that was the only last story that you could tell, it's just kind of whatever moves your heart. I mean, yeah, it's a tough one. I know.
Wow. I think, if I had one more story to tell, it would probably be something about perseverance, particularly in situations where you don't belong. Every amazing thing that's happened to me, especially in my career, has happened by asking for forgiveness, not permission. Putting myself in a situation where I had no business being and taking on way more than I should have without anyone's permission. And it always paid off for me tenfold. So something like that. That's been the big lesson for me.
Inspirational and encouraging. That's fantastic, Danielle. So where can people find you? They want to connect with you. They love what your story sounds like. Where can they find you?
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Rhodes the Writer, Rhodes. And I'm on Facebook, Danielle Rhodes. But yeah, Rhodes the Writer. I'm on social.
All over the place. Fantastic, Danielle. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today and giving our listeners something to think about.
Thanks for having me.
All right, intro, 3, 2, 1. Now, let's get to the stories. All right, now for the out. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much to our guest, Danielle Rhodes. Be sure to visit her online. You can find those links she mentioned in our show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review and sharing this all over the place. Share it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, email, text, anywhere you can reach other storytellers is always helpful. And like I said, that ratings and review, also very helpful. A big thank you to our partners here at the Storytellers Network. Thank you to Casterly and Podcast Pilot. We appreciate how much you make the world of podcasts a better place. Jamie J. and Sarah Parrish and the rest of the team are terrific humans, and you will be better off knowing them. Plus, without their support, the Storytellers Network would be just a dream in my head. Until next time, here's to telling our stories and having stories to tell. Cheers.